Hello everybody and happy Sunday to you. Hope you're doing well. We're going to take a look at some markets this week as we do every week and look for trading setups, talk about ideas, things to be paying attention to this week, and so much more. Last week we had a very interesting end to the week. And the reason I say that is that, we're looking at the S&P 500. And you may not look at this in your own trading. You may not trade things like indices, US30, etc. But this right here tells us globally with all markets what's going on. This major sell-off in the end of last week was a big red flag to risk on, meaning there's a lot of risk off movements that occurred towards the end of last week, which we'll talk about when we start looking at some currency pairs, gold, things like that. But know that this major break to the downside there on the S&P 500 told us that investors are very weary, they're very scary, and very scared, and it looks like we have some potential to see some continuation if you're trading the US indices back on down to the previous low. If not from there, could we possibly see a further extension past that? Well, it's very possible, but for starters, I think path of least resistance is that price looks like it wants to try to retest the lows here on the S&P, US30, things like that, right? The US indices look like they want to weaken even further. And so that takes us into a couple other things. Of course, inverse to that, we have the US dollar, which the dollar had an incredible week last week. And a lot of times these two do act independent of one another. Sometimes the dollar is up when the S&P is down, but that's what we're kind of seeing right now. We're seeing the dollar strengthen dramatically, and here's why. The Fed is continuing their hawkish story. We see the Fed raising rates. We see, more rate hikes being priced into the market, and that's why we're seeing the dollar just continue to climb. So looking at the dollar, is the dollar a buy? Well, I've mentioned for a few weeks that I would be interested in the dollar if it came back down to this level. We never quite got there in the last few weeks of me recording videos. So here's where we're at. I think that you still have some support levels that the market has formed, but for me as a bull, I'd really only like to see the US dollar as a buy trade if we were to see a pullback down to this level. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. I'm saying that if it happens, that's where I can start looking for potential long setups on some US dollar crosses. Another backup would be if we do see an even further extension down to 99.2, but really I would imagine that if the bulls want to hold they'll probably try and make a stab at the 100 mark. We are floating above the 100 mark right around 101 right now, which is, a lot of progress for the USD bulls. So with that said, let's take a look at some setups for the week ahead. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the A1 EdgeFinder. And guys, the newest version is now out. This is super exciting. This is the first time I'm officially talking about it, and the first time that we've gotten it completed here. So what you're seeing across your screen is the A1 EdgeFinder, which this is our proprietary software here at A1 Trading. We have spent countless hours designing and building this, and what it does is it essentially finds setups based on key metrics that we look at here on the channel all the time. COT reports, interest rates, retail sentiment, seasonality, trend readings, and so much more. And it gives you ideas to look at. So there's many currency pairs for us to look at here today. So I'm going to try and go through some of the ones that the EdgeFinder has found, because again, that's after all the entire purpose of the software is to help us find better trading setups and opportunities in the market. So what we can see here is that the new homepage, again, this is all brand new, the newest update. We've been working on this for the last 2 weeks since the initial launch. We started right into the next version or the next update. So here's the thing, right? We look at this thing. This is a distribution map where you can see on the top left, the top right, there's 4 quadrants, right? Well, in this quadrant system, what you'll see is that there is a score at the bottom and a percentage market change on the left. And what that tells us is that, okay, we have high rated buys over here and we have high rated sells over here. How does it sell? Well, how does it score this? Well, there's an entire thing for you to check out in the help section, but these categories basically give scores, and then a final score is calculated to give us a strong buy, strong sell, etc. So what I've been looking at a lot, what I've been using this, and for those of you guys who already have the EdgeFinder, let me know if this tool is helpful to you, but this has been so helpful to me, is looking for pullbacks in buys and pullbacks in sell rated currencies and assets. So that's really, really cool. So I've been using these 2 quadrants the most to give me setup ideas, which also, for example, we could start at places like CAD Swiss, pound yen. In fact, let's take a look at pound yen, which has a strong buy reading and is also pulling back. Let's go confirm that that is the case. Pound yen, strong buy reading, pulling back. I love this potentially this week for a long setup. And this is the whole idea behind the A1 trading software, which, by the way, is linked down below in the description. We are going to be doing a discounted sale for the new version, which is available right now. If you click the link down below in the description and use the promo code there, you'll get a discount. And one more thing before I move on, we are doing a free version for this software. You're not going to get everything that's up here, but if you would like to try out the free version, what I'll do is I'll include a link down below in the description that sends you to our newsletter on this, which will also send you a free copy of the free version. So that's going to be awesome. So click the link down below in the description if you have any interest in getting this software. Again, it's something we've been designing for the last few months. But let's look at the pound yen. So if we pull up GBPJPY and we take a look at this actual reading individually on this pair, we get a whole load of information. Right now, this is rated as a strong buy here, right? You can see the signal right there. Strong buy based on the following metrics. COT data is not available right now. I think we're just fixing it. Interest rate divergence, though, you can see right here, we have a strong bias towards GBP. So comparing the United Kingdom versus Japan, we have a plus 0.85% bias towards GBP. So that tells us to be more looking on the bias towards buying GBP. So +1. Retail sentiment. The crowd is very short biased on the UK or the pound yen. And so I'm looking to be more on the long side, right? Fading against the crowd that tends to lose money. So that's another one. Seasonality. This month historically is a positive month for GJ. Now we're ending towards the end of this month here, but the thing that you need to know is that April, generally, historically, this blue line here shows us that for this particular pair, the system has, algorithmically gone back through history and calculated the average performance during the month of April for pound yen and given us a reading. So this is telling us that usually it's positive, okay? And trend reading, we have a strong upward trend and a pullback. So all of that being said, we go take a look at the chart, and this is how I'm developing my biases. If you watch my live trading videos recently, I'm taking almost all of my trades based on the EdgeFinders, not necessarily doing all the homework for me, but it's doing a lot of the research for me, showing me ideas and things to consider, and then I'm able to go jump into the charts and take my technical setups. So for me on pound yen, if we get a bit more of a pullback here, I actually like the idea of pound yen at the 50% retracement. It's a bit conservative, but we have moved quite a bit to the upside, so I think we have some room to fall, but my initial attempt at trying to buy pound yen will probably be at the 50% retracement should we get a pullback to support. Previous high, swing low, or sorry, so we broke high. I'm looking to get in on a swing low on this move. If we can get that 50% retracement, I do like that for a possible buy trade looking into next week. So let's look at some more. We'll go back to the home. By the way, you can also look at the score chart summary. We updated this, we made this a lot bigger so it's easier to read through, but you can see rated from highest to lowest, the currency pairs that are considered the strongest going into this week versus the ones that are considered the most worthy of sell trades. And again, all the metrics laid out for you to understand completely why they have the rating they have. Now, there's a whole lot of them that are also really neutral. So if you want to pause the video and take a look at what you're trading right now, feel free to do that because you can always just pause, take a look at it and see what the different things are in case we don't actually take a look at your particular pair. One that I'm interested in is CAD Swiss. So let's look at CAD Swiss. Let's see if I can find it. CAD Swiss. Where are you? Actually, you know what? We'll show off another asset feature of the homepage. Check this out. So if I want to go to a particular pair, I can literally just go here. So this report section, just click CAD Swiss and it'll take me there automatically. We made that because, oh my gosh, that is so much more convenient than trying to dig through. So I almost forgot to use our own feature, but there it is. CAD Swiss. Let's look at this. So this thing has a really strong bias to the upside. And by the way, I think COT data right now is just not showing correctly, or this part is not showing, but this part is. So you can actually see the non-commercial longs. This will be fixed probably by the end of the day, no problem. The developer's been real on it with this stuff, but he's just tweaking and finalizing a lot of these tools and features. So anyways, CAD Swiss is a strong buy for several reasons. COT data, again, it's a positive one, meaning that the institutional traders seem to be more bullish on the CAD. Interest rate divergence, there is a strong bias here towards the CAD, 1.75%. bias towards the CAD. Retail sentiment, we have the crowd shorting this pair. So if the crowd's shorting this pair, tends to be a bad decision to go with the crowd. We're looking to go long there. Seasonality this month historically is positive in April, or this pair. And then you have the trend reading, strong trend to the upside. So that gives us a bias. Now I go looking for buys on CADCHF. And here's the thing, this thing is pulled back. So not only is it, you know, one that I want to buy, it's actually giving me a setup sometime soon, I think. So if I actually draw my fibs from here to here, these are swing trades, by the way. Mostly I'm looking at, you know, higher time frame stuff here. You know, you already saw price tag this level at the 38.2. The question is now, will we get a retest of the 50%? Because again, very similar to pound yen, I like this thing even more if we get just a bit more of a haircut down to the 50% retracement. I think that's a very solid level where, you know, you look left, you have this very big previous level of resistance here that could turn into support going into this week. So if we get the setup, that's what I'm looking for. I think that gives me a good risk reward. I could be looking at this and saying, okay, I'm looking at CAD Swiss. I'm looking at a potential move to the previous high. We have some loose targets here. Yeah, I like this. And then I can kind of say something like this. Stop below structure. This is, of course, a swing trade, so risking 38 pips here. You know, if it goes up to target 1 here, that's like 70 pips, and if it goes all the way to the target 2, previous high, that's 127 pips. And there is potential for it to break out and continue higher. I do think that the CAD Swiss is bullish, but looking for that opportunity to look to go long. If we get it, I like it a lot for possible buys. So that's a pair that is heavy on my watch list at the time of making this. Let's continue on. We'll go back to the home page here for a second. I'd like to just see what else we have rated high. So dollar yen. Now, dollar yen is probably a hot topic right now. If we take a look at dollar yen, coming down here a little bit, but not nearly as much as some of the other ones. And a lot of people really struggling with this pair. This thing has just not been very kind to retail investors. In fact, the reason I know that is if we go back to the pair here, we switch over to dollar yen view. This thing is really short biased by by retail traders. So retail traders are shorting this thing like crazy, and they've been doing it for a long time, right? Trying to short this thing, and when it just keeps going up, it's just a bloodbath for people who are just shorting the pair as it rises and rises and rises. So when we look at this thing, what's the bias? Well, super strong bullish. Again, when we talk about trend following on this channel, we try not to use words like it's gone too far, it has to turn around, right? A lot of times you'll hear that's a logical approach for a lot of traders. And the problem with that is that markets, especially the currency market, it can go on for a long time. The dollar has been so strong. The US 10-year is on the rise. You have so many factors that are driving this thing up higher and higher and higher. And the yen weakness just is out of control. So will it come down at some point? Sure, it will probably have a big pullback. But assuming that it's going to do it here is so dangerous because people have been assuming that since back here and here and here and here. And, you know, will it happen at some point? Yes. But I think the odds here are very not in your favor if you're trying to just short this thing as it continues to trend very strongly higher. So for me, the solution is looking for buys. But I have to get a buy that makes sense. So if I draw, for example, a fib here, if I was to buy pound yen, 38.2 has already been tested once. So if it does come down, I'd probably be looking at something deeper, maybe a 61.8% retracement. And for me, just being cautious with this buy, because the thing with dollar yen here is it's had a great run. So when it does reverse, we have to be very cautious that it doesn't, you know, drop through the floor. And if it does, my stops would be tight. I would not be looking to take huge risk on this currency pair if it does decide to pull back. So let's look at some other ones. We'll go back to the home page here for a moment and see what we can find. So let's look at some sells. We just did a whole bunch of buy readings there. I think did I just lose my internet? I hope I didn't. Hopefully it's not going to mess us up. Nope, seems I still have access. Okay, so if I'm looking at some of the sells here, we have something like pound CAD. Let's look at pound CAD. GBPJPY. Okay, sorry about that. I was my internet cut out a little bit while I was recording, but it looks like we're back, so we're all good. Okay, so we're talking about pound CAD, which has a sell rating on the EdgeFinder. So let's actually go back just to refresh myself. So if I go to pound CAD, This one has a strong sell reading, and you can see that there's several reasons why. You have a long list of things up here at the top. You have COT data, which again, we can't see just yet, but we can see the positioning down here if we'd like. We know that COT data is pointing towards a bearish pound and a bullish CAD relative to one another. Given that information, we also have a slight bias towards the CAD. The reason for this is that the Canadian central bank has a 1% interest rate and the UK has 0.75. So there's a slight bias towards buying CAD over GBP. Putting that into perspective, we also have retail sentiment, which, look at this, you guys. Retail traders are 92% long. They're buying the heck out of this pair. And so when I look at that, I'm saying, okay, well, I don't really want to be buying into this when the whole retail crowd is doing the same thing. I'd be a little bit more interested in looking for possible sell setups. Seasonality this month historically tends to be a bearish month. Seems like a very positive month in the month of April for CAD. And then finally, we have a strong trend reading to the downside. So looking at this one, of course, we looked at it, we got a glimpse here, and you can see that it already kind of has made its move. It looks like there was probably a sell setup up here. Of course, hindsight 2020. But if we do get some pullbacks here this week, maybe there's some opportunities to look for this. We'll mark some support and resistance levels to keep in mind going into this week. Of course, we have the previous highs. We have this swing high here, and if we maybe drop down to the 1 hour chart, perhaps we can look for some ideas too. So I think we're probably headed back down. My bias would be a move back down to levels like 1.6279, and then perhaps if you get some sort of medium term pullback, if you get something intraday, something like that, maybe there's an opportunity for a pullback setup there. So for example, maybe you get something like this week and ultimately close lower. We'll have to see. But for me, looking at this pair, it would be bearish until otherwise, right? The EdgeFinder pretty much is what I'm using to kind of derive a general bias for each pair that I'm looking at. So another popular topic is gold, but for me, gold is kind of just no man's land right now. And we can see this just from the EdgeFinder, but let's go take a look at the chart and I'll show you just what I mean. So if I go over to XAUUSD, for people who are trading gold, this thing has just been so back and forth. You could see we trended really well here for a brief period of time, did not make it anywhere near back to the previous highs, and then failed out, putting in this lower high right here. So this lower high was a big kind of warning flag for me looking at the gold market, right? We didn't make any stab higher, and now we did fail lower, but we're still, you know, kind of just in between major levels. For me, gold doesn't really get interesting until you either see a break above this structure or a break below this structure. So to be more specific, I think we're just kind of in a range here where we had that big blowout move due to the war trade that went on, and then we've since kind of just gone back to normalizing, right? Back and forth, chopping back and forth. So for me, gold would be interesting if we were to see a break underneath. We had a bit of pressure on the gold market with the Fed coming out last week, just being very hawkish. So if we get something like this, perhaps there's some sell setups on gold. We could get back into a downward trend structure. Or if something changes and we get something bearish for USD, or just war fears, or something happens that causes markets to be timid again, perhaps we look at something like that, right? So again, waiting for a break above or below these major areas of support and resistance on the gold market. That would be my take on it, especially considering we just have a neutral signal from the EdgeFinder. So let's go take a look at some more popular ones. Let's look at EURUSD, another high rated sell on the EdgeFinder here. This one has a sell in many categories. You can see a -5 score overall. COT data is pointing towards a very strong USD. We have interest rate divergence, 0.5% towards USD. Retail sentiment, the crowd is very long on this pair. Seasonality, we have this month being just very slightly negative. And then finally, a slight downward trend. So if we go back to the chart and take a look at EURUSD this week, what's the setup here? Well, let's look at the daily chart just to show you. Look how strong this downward trend is. Just continuous selling in this market. And so from when I'm looking at this, there's a couple of things that I'd like to look out for. Just from a daily perspective, we are kind of sitting at like just this spot where we can't seem to get past. I'd like to see this thing break out. If this trend is really going to continue, we'd probably want to see this thing make a stab underneath the lows. And from there, perhaps there's sells on retest kind of ideas. So we'll look out for something like that going into this week. Now, before I end this video, please remember you can get a copy of the A1 EdgeFinder, which is our proprietary software that we showed you. It it breaks down a whole selective group of currencies. We added the home chart and we added several new currency pairs to the list. We have things like gold, all the different major crosses. We even added some exotics. We have USD ZAR on the screen now, USD TRY, and we have a whole bunch of other updates that we just added to the list here. So if you would like a copy of the A1 EdgeFinder, you can click the link down below in the description to get a copy. Use the promo code there in the description. We're going to be selling this thing for a cheaper price for a limited period of time as we try out the newest update as a community here. We have several people who are already using it. So for those of you guys who do already use it, please give us some feedback. Let us know what you're liking, what could be improved, so on and so forth. Thank you guys for watching and have a great trading week, and we'll see you next time.